Hello, welcome back. In this lesson, we're going to talk about variables and data types in Java. A variable is a container that holds a value which will be used in the program. In Java, every variable should be declared and it should be initiated with a value before it is used. Now, let us take a look. Let us fire up our Eclipse that we installed in our previous lesson. It always prompts for what workspace you want to work in. Usually it selects the one we used last time. So in this case, I'm keeping Test Auto workspace for now and clicking on Launch. So that brings up the welcome screen. We can close that. And we have our project right here, Test Automation, with a single file, welcome.java, which simply prints out welcome to testautomation.co. Here, let us use the same Java class to demonstrate variables and how to declare and initiate the variables. Like I mentioned, variable is a container that holds a value which would be used in the program. It's like a placeholder. So if I want to save or use a number for summation or subtraction, I need to store them in variables. Let us try to look at a simple example of addition and printing it into the output. Before start coding, let us take a look at how a variable will be declared and what are the various data types. Before that, one Eclipse shortcut for you. I just want to increase the size of the font in the Eclipse editor. You can do that by using Control key and plus sign. Control key, hold the Control key and hit the plus sign so that the size of the font gets bigger. It's much readable now. It will make more sense if we start with the goal, which is nothing but the goal is nothing but, in our case, it's summation of two numbers. So in Eclipse, in Java, 2 forward slashes means a comment. So the compiler will not compile that part. So you can add your documentation or any kind of comments you want to add to the code. So here I will add a comment saying sum of two numbers. Okay, and here I'm going to use a variable by name first number. I will declare that first number variable as integer. Int stands for integer. It's the data type, and the name of the variable itself is first number, and I will initiate it to a value of 20. Then I will declare one more number which is also an integer. I will call it as second number and I will assign a value of 5. Okay, so here these are the two variables we have declared. This part is called the variable and this part is called data type. So data type indicates what type of data is going to be stored in first number. And if you want to store a double, this is again another type of data type, you can do that. If you want to store float, you can declare that as a float. So in our case, it's a whole number we are trying to use, so we will declare that both of them as integers for now. We will look at double, float, boolean, which are the other types of data types, in a little bit. So we have declared two variables, and we want one more variable to store the sum of these two numbers, which would be int sum of two numbers equals to 0 for now, and we will do the actual addition right below here. Sum of two numbers equals to first number plus second number, right? And here we're trying to print out the value to the screen, so I will do system.out.println the sum is sum of two numbers, right? And try to run this. Right click anywhere in the editor and do run as Java application, and it will print out the sum is 25, the sum of these two numbers. Okay, here you might be wondering, if you are very new to the programming, what's going on in this particular line. Integer declaration, integer summation seems straightforward, I assume. So apart from that, in this tab we're trying to, this is the syntax to print out to the screen, but here I have used double quotes to put the string. Whatever string you want to print out, you can put it in double quotes, as long as it's a string you want to print directly to the screen. You can add it in the double quotes. Not necessarily alphabets, it can be numbers or anything, but which does not require any manipulation. You will simply put it into the quotes and you can print out that. This is more like a convenience to understand what we are printing, just adding a little label to what we are printing to the screen, right? So if I run this, it doesn't make any compilation. It will simply print whatever we added into the quotes, right? So here, so this number and the 25 got mixed up, and it appears like a one big number. So I added some space and some funky characters and try to run it one more time to show you it has nothing to do with the actual calculation. Okay, I will remove this unnecessary text from there and rerun it. So I might be going a little slow, assuming there might be people who has no programming background is taking this lesson. So you have to bear with me if you're already exposed to programming. Otherwise, I want to maintain this pace for now, at least for the first few classes. Then I will pace up a little bit in the later lessons. So in this case, we have declared a variable and assigned a value. Okay, you need to get that. So I declared this variable as int data type. And what are the different types of data types we have in Java? That's one thing you want to know, right? So different types of data types are int, float, double, boolean, or the different types of primitive data types we have in Java. I want you to read some text or information about various data types in Java. Though we frequently use in general is integer and boolean and string. Even though string is not a primitive data type, it still has some special considerations which will be used as a primitive data type in most of the cases. So here I'm introducing you two different things. One, different data types, and primitive data types and non-primitive data types. Forget about non-primitive data types for now. We are focused on primitive data types. What we are seeing right here, integer, boolean, float, double, those four are primitive data types, with an exception of string, which can be used like a primitive data type, but it is non-primitive data type. When we are doing more examples, you will understand why string is an exception for being a primitive data type. Okay, let us see what are the definitions of these primitive data types in the next step. So in Java, we have about 8 primitive data types, which are boolean, byte, char, short, int, long, float, and double. Each data type has its range of values that it can store. For example, if you are storing decimals, you will be using float. If you're using plain whole numbers, you will be using integer. And if you're storing true, false, boolean is like either true or either false, you will be using boolean. If you're storing character, single character like A, B, C, as such, you will be using char. I highly recommend going through various data types in Java, but most frequently used ones, like I mentioned earlier, would be integer, boolean, and float. I will provide that link here as a comment so that it will be accessible for you from the Bitbucket. I'll talk about the Bitbucket again. Bitbucket is a code storage, code repository website where I will upload the code. You can simply check out from there and you can run it locally. That makes it easier for you, and you will have full access to the code that we are writing right now. Let us take a look at two more primitive data types before we conclude this lesson. Two more primitive data types, char and boolean in action. So let us declare, I want to declare char first, so I would do that by declaring data type char, and I want to store capital K in it, right? So this variable name can be anything. It can be capital KITE, kite, or whatever. It doesn't make sense. It doesn't matter actually. You should use something that makes sense though. So since I'm going to store capital K, I'm naming this char variable name as capital K and assigning a value of capital K in it, and a semicolon is followed right after every statement in Java. So that's the notation, that is the syntax. So I want to print out this particular capital K, so I would do system.out.println, and there is a shortcut. If you can type in SYSO and do control spacebar, it will give you an option to select so that you don't have to type every time. All you need to do is select that. And now I'm going to print this chart to the screen. All I do is system.out.println and the variable name. Let us right click and run as Java application, and we can see K is being printed out here, right? Let us try to store Ki into the variable char. Char variable, you have to mouse over and see the error message it's showing up. It is saying invalid character constant. And if you look into the problems here, if you expand on the error, you will get the same message, invalid character constant, because a char variable holds only one character at a time. It cannot hold multiple characters. That's why it's complaining about invalid character constant. So once I remove that I, it will be happy again without the red underline. So that's the character declaration. And let us take a look at a Boolean declaration. Boolean. This is a Boolean for pass or fail, and this can be assigned a value of true or false, one of those two. So again, I will do the same sys out here and try to print out this value, and right click run as Java application, and it prints out true here. So if I declare it as false, if you run as Java application, it will print out false right there. So booleans hold true or false. Character variable holds a single character, and integer holds integer values. Here's the simple assignment for you at the end of this lesson. Know about other types we have in the data types. So we have seen specifically integer, char, and boolean. Read about byte, short, long, float, and double, and try to work on them. Quite honestly, unless it's a mathematical application, you won't be working on the remaining data types a whole lot. You will be using integer, char, boolean, and string, which we did not discuss yet. These 4 data types more regularly than any other data type. So with that, I will conclude this lesson. We'll see you next time. Thank you.